Sandra Bullock looked like she had it all. She was one of Hollywood's biggest stars, one of the highest-paid actresses in the world, and an Academy Award winner whose movies earned billions at the box office. To millions of fans, her life seemed almost perfect. But behind the cameras, a very different story was unfolding. It was a story filled with quiet sacrifices, heartbreaking moments, and one decision she made again and again. No matter what happened, she always chose to protect her children first. And that's exactly why her adopted son, Louis, seems almost unrecognizable today. But how did everything lead to this point? By the late 2000s, Sandra Bullock had become one of the few actors whose name alone could fill theaters. She didn't need superhero movies or huge franchises. Audiences simply wanted to watch her. Then came 2009, the biggest year of her career. She starred in The Blind Side, playing Lee Tui, the woman who welcomed future NFL player Michael O'Hare into her family. The movie became a massive success, earning more than $309 million worldwide on a budget of just $29 million. Soon after, Sandra stood on Hollywood's biggest stage and won the Academy Award for Best Actress. It looked like the perfect ending to a long journey. But here's what almost nobody knew. Long before she held that Oscar, Sandra had already started another journey that mattered far more to her. Away from movie sets and red carpets, she had been quietly trying to become a mother. It wasn't something she talked about in interviews. It wasn't part of her public image. It was deeply personal. And everything changed after Hurricane Katrina devastated New Orleans in 2005. While the world focused on the destruction, Sandra couldn't stop thinking about the children whose lives had been turned upside down. Could that tragedy change her life forever? Together with her husband at the time, Jesse James, she began exploring adoption, especially through Louisiana's foster care system. What started as a conversation slowly became a serious commitment. Around 2006, they entered the adoption process in complete secrecy. Very few people knew. Even many close friends had no idea. The process was long and demanding. It involved home studies, interviews, legal reviews, background checks, and years of waiting. During that time, Sandra's public life looked completely normal. She kept filming movies, attending premieres, and smiling for photographers. But behind closed doors, she was preparing for the biggest role of her life. And then came the phone call she had been waiting for. Louis Bardo Bullock was born in New Orleans in 2009. When Sandra met him at just a few months old, she later said she instantly knew he belonged with her. He officially came home in January 2010. Remarkably, this happened months before the public even knew he existed. While reporters followed every step of her award season campaign, Sandra was learning how to care for a newborn. Sleepless nights replaced glamorous evenings. Bottles and diapers became more important than red carpets. One life played out in front of millions. The other stayed completely hidden. But how long could such a huge secret remain hidden? Those first months were incredibly busy. The Blind Side was dominating the box office. Sandra attended award shows almost every week, including the Golden Globes, the Screen Actors Guild Awards, and countless interviews leading up to the Oscars. Photographers followed her everywhere, yet almost nobody realized a baby was waiting for her at home. Only a tiny circle of trusted family and friends knew the truth. Sandra even chose Louis's name as a tribute to jazz legend Louis Armstrong, another famous son of New Orleans. It was her quiet way of honoring the city where her son had been born. Everything seemed to be falling perfectly into place. Then, almost overnight, everything collapsed. On March 7, 2010, Sandra accepted her Oscar. It should have been the happiest moment of her career. But less than 2 weeks later, headlines exploded with allegations that Jesse James had been unfaithful during their marriage. The scandal quickly became one of the biggest celebrity stories of the year. More women came forward with similar claims, and the media frenzy only grew. Suddenly, Sandra's Oscar win was no longer the biggest headline. Her personal life was. But there was one person she was determined to shield from all the chaos. At the center of the storm was baby Louis, only a few months old. The public still didn't know he existed. While photographers surrounded her home and reporters chased every rumor, Sandra focused on protecting her son. She had originally planned to introduce Louis to the world after award season, but the scandal forced her to change those plans. Instead of making joyful announcements, she disappeared from public view. She left the home she had shared with Jesse James and quietly focused on building a new life. Would she continue the adoption alone? The answer came only weeks later. Sandra filed for divorce and publicly revealed the secret she had guarded for years. She confirmed that Louis had already been living with her and announced she would complete the adoption as a single mother. The marriage was over, but motherhood was just beginning. Rather than spending months fighting back against gossip, she chose something far more important. She poured her energy into raising her son. Friends later said her priorities changed completely. Awards, movie deals, and Hollywood events suddenly meant very little compared to creating a stable home for Louis. And that decision would shape every year that followed. After becoming a mother, Sandra became much more selective about her career. She still starred in successful films like Gravity, The Heat, Bird Box, Ocean's 8, The Lost City, and several others. But long breaks between projects became common. She repeatedly said work had to fit around her family, not the other way around. Unlike many celebrities, she refused to turn her children into public figures. There were no family magazine covers, no social media updates, and almost no public appearances. In fact, most photos of Louis came from unexpected paparazzi shots during ordinary family outings. But keeping him away from cameras was only part of the challenge. Sandra also understood that raising a black son as a white mother came with responsibilities she had to take seriously. Instead of pretending race didn't matter, she openly admitted she had to keep learning. During a 2021 appearance on Red Table Talk, she spoke honestly about wanting to understand the experiences her children would face. She wanted Louis and later Layla to grow up proud of who they were while also being prepared for the realities of discrimination. It wasn't always an easy conversation, but Sandra believed avoiding it would be far worse. Then another important person entered their lives. In 2015, Sandra began dating photographer Brian Randall. They reportedly met when he photographed Louis's birthday party. Unlike her previous relationship, this one stayed almost entirely out of the spotlight. Friends described Brian as calm, caring, and deeply devoted to family life. That same year, Sandra revealed she had quietly adopted a second child, a little girl named Layla. Once again, she kept the entire process secret until every legal step had been completed. She later joked that it felt like living in witness protection because everyone worked so hard to keep the adoption private. But here's the part that surprised even Sandra. According to her, Louis had spent months telling everyone that a little sister was going to join the family. He seemed completely convinced long before Layla arrived. When the adoption was finalized, his prediction came true. Sandra has often shared how naturally Louis stepped into the role of protective older brother, helping Layla adjust after her time in foster care. Their family finally seemed complete. Sadly, another heartbreaking chapter was already beginning behind closed doors. For years, Brian Randall quietly battled ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. Very few people knew about his diagnosis because he chose to keep it private, and those closest to him respected that decision. Around the same time, Sandra announced she was taking a break from acting after The Lost City. Many assumed she simply wanted time off after decades in Hollywood. Later, the truth became clear. She wanted to spend every possible moment caring for Brian and being with her children. When Brian passed away in August 2023 at the age of 57, the loss deeply affected the entire family. Once again, Sandra protected Louis and Layla from public attention during one of the hardest moments of their lives. As the years passed, curiosity about Louis only grew stronger. Because Sandra had done such an effective job keeping him out of the spotlight, every rare glimpse attracted enormous attention. In 2025 and early 2026, photographers captured a few casual family outings in Southern California. There were no movie premieres or public events. Just ordinary moments outside restaurants or while walking together. Yet entertainment websites immediately declared that Sandra Bullock's son was unrecognizable. But was there really anything shocking about the photos? Not really. The biggest difference was simply time. The public remembered Lewis as a toddler because that was the last stage of his life most people had seen. 15 years later, he had naturally grown into a tall, lean teenager who stood nearly as tall as his mother. Wearing hoodies, jeans, sneakers, baseball caps, and t-shirts, he looked like countless other teenagers across America. There were no flashy designer outfits or attempts to attract attention. The so-called transformation was simply adolescence. Sandra's success at protecting his privacy had made normal growing up seem like a huge surprise. Many clickbait stories also repeated dramatic claims about Lewis's early life, including stories about medical problems or tragic circumstances. But Sandra has never confirmed many of those details. She has always been careful about what she shares, believing some parts of her children's lives belong only to them. That same approach has guided her conversations about adoption. She has never claimed love alone solves every challenge. Instead, she has spoken openly about learning, listening, and making sure both Lewis and Layla feel supported as they grow into adulthood. Even as rumors continue about a possible return to Hollywood, including reports linking her to Practical Magic 2 with Nicole Kidman and renewed excitement about another reunion with Keanu Reeves, Sandra has made one thing clear. If she returns, it will happen on her own terms. Her family will always come first. That may be the most remarkable part of her story. She has won the biggest awards, starred in billion-dollar films, and built one of the most successful careers in Hollywood. Yet when she talks about what truly matters, the conversation always comes back to two children she fought so hard to protect. In the end, perhaps that is the greatest role Sandra Bullock has ever played, not a character on a movie screen, but a mother determined to give her children the normal, loving life they deserved.